Today I'm joined on the Sanfilippo project by Carl Kapes, who is thrust into this fundraising and advocacy journey, just a regular dad who hopped into the fight, and now he's actually the National MPS Society Annual Fund. He's the chairperson here. That'd be good to hear his story, and hopefully it's something we can all pick some information from and learn from. So, Carl, I'll turn it to you.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so I was like anyone else in rare disease space. You kind of get thrust into this. This isn't something we usually volunteer to do. So your children get diagnosed with a rare genetic disorder that's fatal, pushed into a corner. There's not much you can do. You can sit down and cry about it, or you can get out there and do something. And that was what I wanted to do. So at the time, my sons were diagnosed with MPS3, which is Sanfilippo. There wasn't a lot out there from the doctors that there's nothing that they can do. Your first instinct as a parent and even as a human being is like, okay, what can I do to try and change that? Trying to get a treatment or a cure is going to take a lot of work and a lot of funding. One of the first things that a lot of folks that get thrown into this do is like, okay, how do we help and what can we do? And usually funding is a big part of that. So MPS3 at the time didn't have a lot of research. There wasn't a lot of funding. There wasn't any treatments out there. And uphill battle to climb, if you will. And my big fundraisers were the mountain climbs. So I did Kilimanjaro in 2012, and then I did near 2016, and then Pico de Orizaba in 2018. And then we did some documentaries around them, but that was all kind of a way to drive funding. And there was a gene therapy out there.
Are you connected with certain foundations that were helping you create these fundraising opportunities here and go forward, or what?
Interesting enough, at the time, the National MPS Society was basically the foundation that really existed, that was like a nationwide foundation and probably the most prevalent one out there. So I first went and actually talked with them and asked what was going on. And we didn't get a lot of feedback as far as what they were doing for MPS3. They were more MPS 1 and MPS 2 focused at that time. What we did is myself and a few other parents, Kathleen Buckley of Team Sanfilippo, Neil O'Connor, and Patty Tarmino kind of got together and say, hey, we don't think that there's enough going for Sanfilippo, the National MPS Society. So we went and created the Team Sanfilippo Foundation. We wanted all our funding and everything that we did to go directly towards Sanfilippo research. And at that time, that's when we got connected with Miller, who was creating Abeona Therapeutics at that time. They were doing some good research. It was out at Ohio State. Dr. Hein Fu was doing lab research with mice, and they were doing a gene therapy for Sanfilippo Syndrome. And Tim thought it was very promising and wanted to take that research out of the lab. That's the big piece, right? There's a lot of research that gets done, but then getting that research to a viable treatment or a clinical trial is the tough part. And that's what Tim was willing to do. We had the science behind it. He had the results from the lab that he thought he can to people. So that's what we did. So we created that Team Sanfilippo Foundation, and we were really focused on driving funding to help Tim with Abeona. So we joined with numerous foundations to kind of pull our money together. Foundations around the world, Australia, France, Germany, Canada was another big one where we got together with foundation heads that were looking specifically at Sanfilippo at that time and said, hey, let's get our money together. We're going to try and get this treatment, this research to a treatment. We only need money, and that's what we really pulled our money together. That's when I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, all around the driving, the creating of Abeona at that time.
How did the groups literally come together before Zoom time, before social media kind of took off?
Email. At that point, it was really just email. The National MPS Society had a meeting every year so you knew some of the folks here domestically, but then you heard from other foundations and got an email contact with just internet searches, just looking at, okay, if you typed in Sanfilippo, you'd come up with Swiss Sanfilippo, or Cure Kirby was a big one with the Wilsons in Chicago. So that's where we just started to reach out to the different foundations and say, hey, we got something here. You guys have been raising money for a long time for this stuff. Can we come together? So we were talking with Tim. Tim needed money. I mean, he had to do other fundraising outside of raising funds to create Abeona, but the foundations were a big driver for getting Abeona created and then getting that treatment that Dr. Hein Fu was working on out at Ohio State nationwide, get that going. So that's Mount Kilimanjaro fundraiser, which I think we raised close to $1 million on, the big driver for getting Abeona up and going and really getting beginning of that trial, just kind of getting it going, just putting everything together.
Had you been a mountain climber?
No, never climbed a mountain in my life. And I actually got the idea from another family, the Chapins. Blair passed away several years ago from Sanfilippo, and I met Roger, and his brother Patrick was climbing Mount Kilimanjaro with their dad, and their dad was a cancer survivor. So what they did was Patrick and his dad did a Kilimanjaro climb, and they took a small flag. It was just like a purple MPS flag. We met the Chapins at the National MPS Society meetings, the yearly meetings, the conferences that they have. We knew them from there, and they said, hey, they're going to climb up the mountain, and Patrick's dad and Roger's dad was going to do it because he was a cancer survivor. So he wanted to prove they did stuff like that. They climbed mountains in the past. They've done stuff. So they're like, okay, we're going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. We're going to take this flag. They put a couple kids' names on it, and they did it, and they were successful. I think the father didn't make it. I think because he had a throat cancer at the time. And I think he had some issues with just being able to breathe. And Patrick made it. So they took the flag up. There was no fundraising around it, but that's what gave me the idea of, wow, that's something that's incredible. If I did something like this, I bet you I can get a lot of people engaged and a lot of people to kind of rally around it. And it's something different because when you look at Sanfilippo or just MPS in general, it's a rare disease. So it doesn't impact a lot of people. So when you're not impacting a lot of people, it's hard to get people engaged and stay engaged. When you get newly diagnosed, as you know, everyone rallies around you, but then that kind of wanes off. And that's natural because people aren't every day dealing with it. They help you in the beginning, it's terrible. And it's not that they don't want to help you, but it's just human nature. Where if you look at something like cancer or heart disease, you probably can name 5 people off the top of your head that have cancer or have heart disease, right? So it impacts everyone on a daily basis because someone who has it, where like you don't, Sanfilippo and MPS, you don't have that. So it's rare and it's hard to get people engaged. So Kilimanjaro for me was a way to get people like, hey, this guy's doing something crazy. And it was a way to get people involved and engaged. And it worked. Oh, I did the mountain climb. So I had never done a mountain climb, but I got that idea from the Chapins. It was something, again, kind of outlandish, something completely different. It wasn't a run walk or a guest bartender event that everybody does.
When you get that diagnosis, it does give you an opportunity to say, fuck it, I'm going to try something challenging and new, and you got nothing to lose.
Try to put the resources you have, like what can I best do with my resources? So I was an athlete in college. I played baseball at Villanova. I had an athletic background, and Kilimanjaro was that was a physical feat to be able to do that. So how can I use the resources I had, having again an athletic background? What can I do? How can I use that? And that's really how Kilimanjaro kind of evolved for me. And someone else may be better with something else, but that's how that got in for me.
How did you promote this? People know you were doing this.
Interesting enough, being in the Philadelphia area as you are, I was actually a big fan of WMMR, the radio station, 93.3, and I had always listened to them, and I thought it would be really cool if they came with me. So I reached out to Nick McElwain, who's still on the morning show, the Preston and Steve morning show. I reached out to him, and I'll never forget it. I sent him an email and said, hey, Nick, I'm climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. If I paid for you to come with me and you gave me the publicity on the radio to do it, would you do it? And I actually got an email back, an automated response back from them. They do a ton of charity work. Preston and Steve, they're amazing. 93.3. WMMR, they do a ton of stuff. So I got an automated message back that, hey, thanks for reaching out. We'd love to help you, but we can't help everyone and all that kind of stuff. And I actually responded to him and said, dude, like my kid's dying. I get an automated response back saying like, yeah, we'd love to help you, but just go through the normal charity channels and we'll get back to you if we can. And he saw it. He said, I don't get them all. They get they get so many of these questions and people ask him to help them. And he's like, I saw that just happened to pop across. And he's like, I felt so bad. And he's like, because that's not what we're about, but we can't look at every request that comes in. So he actually called me and said, dude, like, oh, so sorry. Like, I didn't mean to be, explained it to me. And he's like, that sounds awesome. And Nick was kind of an outdoor guy, and he loves like national parks and all that kind of stuff. And he was really like, yeah, let's do this. And then we started to talk, and from an idea to a reality. And, so I was on the radio several times with Nick on WMMR, which they have millions of listeners. And then when we summited Mount Kilimanjaro, we actually called into the radio station from the summit of Kilimanjaro on a sat phone.
Nice.
So I got a lot of exposure, and we had events leading up to it. I mean, we did events there was an Iron Hill up in Ardmore. We did an event at Xfinity Live, again, through WMMR, because they had all those connections.
Yeah.
So that's what made it not easy, but that really helped me a bunch, getting them involved and then being able to promote what we were doing.
So you go on these climbs. Take me from there to where your path as an advocate evolved over the decade or so that followed.
We created Abiona. We had to raise more money to buy drug and do different things. So we kind of went through that, and we got that. We kind of kicked off that treatment, if you will, or that clinical trial, which is out there today. I believe Ultragenyx has the rights to it now, and I think they're talking about continuing on with it. But they did, they treated several patients, and I kind of felt like we did a good job of pushing it. There was still more that needed to be done. So, I was really honed in on Sanfilippo at that time because that's what my kids had. I guess I wasn't quite fulfilled, if you will. And like I felt like we needed to do more. We pushed Sanfilippo, and there's still a ton to do with Sanfilippo, but I felt like I wanted to do more. And I kind of circle back, and the National MPS Society, it obviously changed over the years. But the National MPS Society represents all the different central nervous system diseases that are out there, the rare diseases. You got Hunter's, you got Hurler's, you have Sanfilippo. There's a bunch of different things that they represent. I'm still part of Team Sanfilippo. I mean, we're still there, we're still working, but I felt like I wanted to do more, and being re-engaged with the National MPS Society gave me an opportunity to help them focus on a little bit more on MPS 3, which I felt they weren't doing, and that was 10 years ago. They're very focused on that now. But I felt like being on the board of the National MPS Society gave me the opportunity to kind of help them focus a little bit more on MPS, but also gave me the opportunity to focus on some of the other syndromes as well. Because at the end of the day, they're all central nervous system syndrome. Yeah. They all affect the central nervous system. A lot of the treatments that they may see in MPS 2 can help in MPS 3. Denali has a clinical trial going on now that was started in MPS 2. And now they're moving it over to MPS 3 because the way that it affects the same, they can use the same mechanism to kind of help MPS 3. So it all ends up tying together. So National MPS Society was an opportunity for me to branch out of not just Sanfilippo, but have a bigger impact in the community. And so in 2024 here, I'm the annual fund chairperson. So again, it gives me that opportunity to raise money for the society as a whole, not just for Sanfilippo, but for all the different MPS syndromes and diseases that are out there. So I get to have a bigger impact doing that. Team Sanfilippo is great. I love Team Sanfilippo. The MPS Society gives me that additional platform to even branch out further and have a bigger impact. It's hard in the beginning because you have a child that has Sanfilippo, so you're focused on saving your child. But then as you mature, and it is about your child, but it's not, right? So your natural instinct is to go in, and it's all about your child, and then it gets bigger than that. That's how you kind of evolve. I think that's how I evolved, personally, just to want to do more and not just focus on. I still focus obviously on my children, but being able to focus and help others is really fulfilling to me. National MPS Society has a large membership. It's a big foundation, so we reach out to our members. We tell them our stories. I mean, it was a story that I just told you. We get out there. We tell the folks our stories and get them on board with here's what we're doing. Here's our mission. Here's what we're trying to accomplish. We want to talk about what we're doing. You want to raise money, and in the beginning it's easy to raise money when you have a child that's going to die, but after a while folks want to know, where's my money going? Like what's my money doing? Like if I donate $100 to National MPS Society, what is that going to do? Who's that going to help? So we spend a lot of time talking about what our mission is, what our plans are, what we're doing with the money, the different researches that we're funding, the different programs that we have. The National MPS Society is not only about finding treatments and cures. That's a big part of it, but it's also about family support, supporting families, because it's not, a lot of these children at this point, because we don't, even in Sanfilippo space, we don't have a treatment or cure that you can just go out there and get. Now in MPS 1 and MPS 2 space, there's more viable treatments. But the families need support. I mean, there's a lot of medical bills. There's a lot of emotional support that's needed. Parents like myself, you lose a child. I mean, that's devastating. And the National MPS Society offers programs, like supportive programs that help families. It's not just about, hey, yeah, we're pushing for a treatment and a cure and funding research, but we also want to be there for the families, newly diagnosed families. They have a lot of questions. We have an outreach program that goes out there, and as soon as families get diagnosed, we'll talk with them. We'll offer them resources, offer them information. How can we help? We want folks to feel like they're not alone. And that's a big piece of it too. We spend a lot of time talking about, what we're doing and how we're helping folks. And I think that really gets, folks on board. But social media platforms, getting on MMR again, I'll go on MMR again and talk about it and just, and even call our members, the National MPS Society, the members, just talking to them about, my journey. Every year there's a different chair that talks about their story and how they got engaged and what they're doing to try to advance everything. So it's a with that.
Two last questions here. Can you tell me a little about how maybe your professional background has helped you in a way to kind of find your role in this fight? And also, generally speaking, what is your advice for newly diagnosed parents of kids, say, with Sanfilippo or other MPSs? They're scared, they don't know where to turn, they don't know how to fundraise. Like, where do you start?
My professional background, leadership. So I'm in the leadership role in my profession. And, I think I bring leadership skills to the table. So I try to use my leadership skills to help drive things. I can get out there. I can talk in front of people. Like we talked about talking, being on WMMR, like some folks just wouldn't want to do that, right? That's
Yeah.
intimidating to have 2, 3 million people listening to you on the radio. Some folks don't do that. So, public speaking and just leadership abilities being, I'm not afraid to call someone and say, hey, what can we do? We need to raise money, or here's a treatment like Tim Miller. When we talked about Tim Miller in the beginning, like I wasn't, we weren't afraid to talk with Tim Miller and get on there. Like he has something like I'll call the other, let me call the other foundations and bring them together and lead,
Yeah.
so I use my leadership skills. And then, like I said, my physical abilities. I'm not a professional athlete, but I was a highly successful collegiate athlete. So, I was able to use those physical skills to do the mountain climbs and stuff like that. So I think my recommendation for, anyone out there that's wondering how they can help is everyone's good at something. You don't have to be a collegiate athlete or in a leadership role in your profession, but there's things that you can do, and everyone can help in a different way. And it takes an army. It takes an army to battle up against, and our children are up against, and to try and get treatments and cures. And whether you're a lawyer or you can talk with, you can sit and talk with the FDA, or you have some sort of PR position. There's just different things that you can
Yeah.
do. It all comes together. So I think learning how you can help is the biggest advice. Like don't think that you can't help. Don't think that the skills that you have aren't helpful or aren't useful. They may not seem on its face, it may not seem like you can help, but you can. There's things you can do. I mean, there's families, they do a derby. It's a crash derby, a car crash derby,
Yeah.
up in New York. And who would think at the end of the day, like these guys run a demolition derby, and who would think that their child gets diagnosed with Sanfilippo, and a demolition derby can help advance treatment
Yeah.
or cure. But they've raised so much money.
Yeah. It's
For
because they love doing it. So they're like, you might as well
exactly, but
combine what you want to do or try to do and love.
yeah, everyone has hobbies and everyone
Yeah.
does things, and it's just every little thing helps, and that's what it takes every ounce of what everyone has to climb that proverbial mountain that we're all climbing. If everyone can help, and I think that, and to never feel alone, because it is as rare as this is a family. This is a family that none of us signed up to be part of, but once you're part of it, it helps. It's a very helpful family. We come together. We're just we pick each other up when we're down, and I think that's important, that folks don't feel alone. I think that's super important. Never feel like you're in this battle alone. And I think
Yeah.
that's what folks have to realize, is there are folks out there that can help them. There's foundations, there's just a lot of folks that want to help. As rare as this is, yeah.